In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
You have joined the Almost Unbelievable Podcast with Cats and Ranty. I'm Cats. Hey there, Ranty.
I am Cats. How are you doing?
I'm doing extremely good. I'm looking forward to the podcast, as always. And should I give you my little bit of trivia now?
Oh, hang on. Wait a minute. On this particular one, I would prefer it if I gave you the trivia this time.
Okay. So the first story from Ranty. Okay, I will put myself on mute. I will sit back and I will listen.
Okay, well, as I'm doing this, I'm going to sort of like just feel my way across it and ask you a couple of questions, basically. Have you heard of the Mandela effect?
I have heard of the Mandela effect, yes.
And how would you explain the Mandela effect?
Do you mean explain it as in what the reason or the cause is, or how do I describe it?
Yeah, how would you describe it?
So I would describe the Mandela effect as when something that you've always thought was true, or something you always thought happened in a particular way, something you got very vivid memories of, turns out not to be quite as you remembered it.
Yeah, essentially, Cats, you've got it right there. I'll give you that. Now then, have you heard of the Mingle effect?
I have never heard of the Mingle effect.
So in 1970, in Ohio, a huge amount of the population remember a guy called Joseph Mingle being apprehended for a crime. Now, since this time, it's now turned out that there was no guy called Joseph Mingle who was arrested in Ohio in 1970, and they've called this the Mingle effect. Do you think that's a true story?
So it's like a version of the Mandela effect, but about a particular individual. I know there are examples out there of the Mandela effect, so I'm going to say yes. I do believe that is a true story.
Well, yes. In an alternate universe, it was a true story. So on the X-Files, season 11, episode 4, we had a guy called Reggie who came back and bumped into Mulder and Scully and told him of the Mingle effect. So whilst they were talking about the Mandela effect, he was calling it the Mingle effect. And it was kind of like a semi-banter way of bringing in the same results for the same effect, but they just called it slightly differently. And I think that theme is exactly what we're trying to say when we're talking about the Mandela effect. Would you agree?
Yeah, I quite like the irony of that, actually. That's quite good.
Okay, so now I'm going to test you. I'm going to send you some images on Skype for you to look at now. I've not sent you these before, have I? You haven't got anything in your inbox in Skype, have you, right now?
No, because I've got no friends, Ranty, nobody ever sends me anything, so this will be a first. Let me get my phone open.
Okay, right. So this is, obviously we have a YouTube channel, so when we release the podcast on YouTube, I will include these images in the podcast on YouTube. So if you're listening on Spotify or Google Podcasts or things like that, if you want to check us out on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. It's just called Almost Unbelievable. Very sexy name there. Anyway, you can go and check it out and the images will be up there. But in the meantime, we are going to test Cat with his own Mandela effect and see whether or not any of these events have happened to him. Okay, so Cat, you can confirm that you've now been sent some images, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first image that you have on screen, is it the Flintstones?
It is. It's a picture of, I forget what the main character's name was now, but yeah, it's the Flintstones.
And which of these two spellings would you say is the correct spelling for the Flintstones?
I would say it's the one on the left, the Flins, like Flynn Stones.
And you would be correct. So, in my case, I remember it being the Flintstones, and you remember it being the Flintstones. So I suppose I'll give you that one. There's no Mandela effect for you personally in this particular image. Right, what's the next one you've got?
But there will be some listeners who remember it your way then, I assume, from what you're saying. Is this quite a well-known Mandela effect?
Yeah, this is one of many that I've just had a quick research for before. And when I saw that one, I was like, hey, come on. It was the Flintstones. Wow. I remember it as being the Flintstones, not the Flintstones. But that's why there's a Mandela effect, because some people remember things being different, I guess. Right, next image. Have you got the Monopoly Man?
I'm looking at the Monopoly Man now, yeah.
And which one would you say is the correct one?
So for those listening, there's a Monopoly Man. The difference between the two pictures is a Monopoly Man has a monocle in one picture and none in the other. And I'm going to say it's the one with the monocle is the correct one.
It's the correct one, which I remember, but apparently no, there was no monocle with the Monopoly Man. In fact, Monopoly Man never had a monocle.
Are you kidding? That is quite striking. I was more confident with that one than I was the other one.
Now, that's blown you away, and this is what the Mandela effect does, because this is, as I say, a very well-known image that everyone seems to remember from being a kid, and they seem to remember it with the Monopoly Man having a monocle, but apparently not. Okay, let's go on to the next image. We have, is it C3PO?
That is C3PO.
And which one do you recall being the correct C3PO?
So, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for this, I don't know, I am a massive Star Wars geek. And I know that when he was given a red arm in The Force Awakens, it was kind of a nod to the fact that he had a different coloured leg in the original film. So I'm going to say it's the one with the silver leg.
And you would be right. Apparently, C3PO always had a silver leg. Again, I don't recall that, and I watched the Star Wars films when I was a kid, and I don't recall him having a different leg. I always seem to remember him being gold, essentially, all over. But it's what they tell us. They tell us that he had a silver leg. Is that how you actually recall it, or is it just because you were a geek?
Yeah, I was going to say that. I do not recall him I don't have a memory of him having the silver leg. In fact, I only found out he had a silver leg a couple of years ago when The Force Awakens came out, and I learned about that little Easter egg. So when did that come out? Force Awakens, 2015, something like that. So I was well into my late 30s before I even found out, and I've been a Star Wars fan all my life. So I guess really that I did suffer from the Mandela effect, and I did think he was gold all over.
Okay, let's go to the next image. Have you got a book in front of you?
I have Sex and the City book, yeah.
So which one would you recall it being the correct name? Sex in the City or Sex and the City?
I always thought it was Sex and the City.
And you would be correct. Apparently it was Sex and the City. However, I always remember it being Sex in the City, and so do a lot of other people too, who also recall it just being Sex in the City. But we're going to have it 2-2 now. It's definitely 2-2. You have two Mandela effects, and you've got two of them correct. Okay.
Oof.
Let's go to the next one. The Kit Kat. One of them has a hyphen between the kit and the cat, and one of them doesn't have a hyphen. Do you recall the hyphen?
I don't recall a hyphen, no.
Okay, well, you would be correct again. The non-hyphen. Yes. The non-hyphen is apparently how it's always been spelt. However, a lot of people remember it with a hyphen. Let's go to the next one. We have Wabbit. A Wabbit on screen. Can you tell us which is the correct spelling for Looney Tunes?
Now, so we've got Looney Tunes as in cartoons and Looney Tunes. Now, I'm going to be honest, I always remembered it as Looney Tunes. But now I look at it like that. It wouldn't surprise me if I was wrong because Tunes fits in with cartoons. But if I'm honest, I remember it as Looney Tunes, as in Tunes.
And again, you would be correct. I
would be correct.
Apparently, that is the true spelling of how it was always as a child. But I have to say, now I specifically remember this one as it being Toons, Toons. So, I don't know. I'm maybe experiencing more Mandela effect than you are.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, like a couple of those there, I definitely... I sort of guessed on the Flintstones one a little bit, if I'm honest. I could have gone the other way. I was totally fooled by the Monopoly one. The C3PO one, I did misremember until I just happened to learn it a couple of years ago. So, I don't know, that's pretty interesting. That was certainly not easy.
Well, there's just a very small segment of what is supposedly a very large batch of Mandela effects that people have said has been true or they've experienced it. So if anybody wants to check that out, the Mandela effect, or if you want to call it the Mingle effect, that's entirely up to you. Go and check it out and see whether or not you have been affected yourself. However, today's guest is a gentleman called Seth, and he has an incredible story because he actually believes that he's living in an alternate reality. He believes that he's actually transitioned from one realm into another. And although the people he knows and people he lives with and the people that are in his life know him, he barely has any recollection of them. How interesting. What do you think, Cass? Are you ready for this?
So here we have the man himself, it's Seth, and we're going to hear a little bit about him and why he thinks he might not be where he's supposed to be. Seth, take it away.
So, obviously, like you said, my name is Seth, and I'm 24. And 2 months ago, or roughly 2 months ago, I was almost in a car accident. And I think that in my memory, the accident didn't happen. It just almost happened. But I'm starting to think that an accident may have actually happened. So I'll just explain. I was going to turn onto a road, and I stopped to make sure no other vehicles were coming, to make sure it was safe to turn. And there were no other vehicles coming my way. So I go to turn onto the road, and all of a sudden a car, which was exactly like mine, just a different color, appeared out of nowhere and almost hit me. And so they had to swerve to miss me, and it looked like they were kind of losing control of their car. So I stopped to make sure that they didn't actually wreck. And when I stopped, the car was nowhere to be seen. It was like it just came out of nowhere and disappeared just as fast as it appeared. And I just went about my day like normal after that. And then about a week later, I started noticing like weird things not adding up. So I feel like I'm lighter. And I don't know exactly how to explain that. It just feels like my body is lighter. But it also feels like this entire world or universe or whatever that I'm in now is much dimmer, much gloomier, not as bright, even on the sunniest days. And then I noticed that basically from the beginning, basically from the next day. But then weird things started happening and not adding up. Like, I specifically remember my friend Nicole getting married to this guy. And I always thought it was such a weird relationship, and I never pictured them getting married. But they did, and I know they did because I met her for lunch one day, and she invited me to the wedding, but I couldn't get off work, and I felt bad about it because I couldn't be there because we were really good friends. And I remember her showing me her wedding dress, telling me where she was going to get married. I remember what the cake looks like. I remember seeing pictures on like Facebook and Instagram. And so then I noticed recently on Facebook that she had changed her name back to her original last name. So I asked another friend, I was like, hey, what happened with Nicole? Like, why did she get divorced? And she was like, Nicole was never married. And I was like, what do you mean Nicole was never married? Like, I specifically remember her inviting me to the wedding. I remember the wedding photos. I remember it all. What do you mean? And she was like, no, Nicole never married the guy. They lived together. They were together for a long time, but they were never married. And so that was the first thing where I was like, whoa, that doesn't make sense. Like, why do I remember this happening, but it hasn't happened? And then, let's see, my little sister has a boyfriend, and I don't remember meeting him until they were dating. However, my entire family and my sister's boyfriend knew each other before that. And he has memories of me from when we were like younger, like 13, 14 years old.
So that was the first part of Seth's incredible story. If you want to hear the rest of that right now, please click any of the links in the description for all the podcasting apps where you can listen to it right now. Failing that, if you want to wait a week, you will hear the rest of it on YouTube when we release the entire video. Have fun and see you in the next one.